Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the heart of dense source material, excavate complex narratives, and deliver the concentrated knowledge you need to be completely informed. Today, we are taking a terrifying journey, not just into the desert, but really into the existential and theological depths of Stephen King's 1996 novel, Desperation.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
This is a synthesis mission that demands we look beyond the supernatural horror is considerable, but we have to look past that.
Right.
We need to analyze the critical context, the profound character work King was doing, and the deep, deep lore around this ancient thing called Tak.
And we've pulled together a ton of sources for this one.
Everything. Critical reviews when it came out, publishing acknowledgments, and just a forensic breakdown of the plot and the metaphors that are woven all through this story.
And the thing that it immediately jumps out from the critical reception is how much noise this novel made. This wasn't just, another Stephen King book.
Not at all.
Critics were calling it a tour de force. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution gave some frankly staggering praise. They called King our best novelist of horror and our most serious anatomist of horror since Edgar Allan Poe.
And that comparison to Poe, that's not just a throwaway line.
No, that's huge.
It's a really important distinction. Poe specialized in internal horror, right? The slow decay of the soul, the mind unraveling.
Right.
So when critics put King in that lineage, they're arguing that Desperation isn't just about, monsters and gore. It's about dissecting moral failure, psychological failure, and what happens when you're confronted with true primordial nothingness.
That philosophical layer is exactly what the critics were grabbing onto. The sources highlight praise not just for the scares, but for the moral and human parts. The Denver Post specifically said King created two of his most substantial characters in this book and delivered entertainment with a moral.
To do both of those things at once. To sustain that level of sheer terror while also building characters that are that rich. That tells you there's a serious engine driving this story.
And a fascinating part of that engine is the structure itself. We absolutely have to talk about the meta-narrative part of this.
Oh, yeah. The fact that Desperation was released at the same time as The Regulators?
It's mirror image, basically, published under the Richard Bachman name.
And that structural choice is what really kept the literary analysts talking. Newsday called the dual publication a fascinating exercise in storytelling because, and this is the key part, it forces readers to rethink the very idea of narrative.
So it's not just a gimmick.
No, not at all. It's a question. When you see the same character names, Marinville, Carver, Entragian, Cherry, in two totally different worlds with different rules and different fates, it makes you ask about identity, about destiny.
Is it the person or is it the place they're in?
Exactly. Are we defined by our own nature or by the context of the world we inhabit? King is basically holding up this bizarre mirror to the whole idea of a story, showing you how unstable it can all be.
Okay, so let's break down some of the foundational stuff. The logistics of this book. It was copyrighted in '96, published by Signet & L after an initial run with Viking.
And we always look at the acknowledgments because they often show you the real-world scaffolding King used. And here, they're especially telling.
The dedication is to a Carter Withy.
Right, but then you see these direct thank yous to people who provided specific expertise. Rich Hassler from the Magma Mining Corporation.
Which is obviously essential.
Of course, the whole climax of the book hangs on the mechanics of a massive open-pit copper mine. It shows he did his homework on the industrial destruction that literally unearths the supernatural evil.
And it's not just industry.
No, and this is maybe even more critical. He thanks William Winston, an Episcopalian minister. That really underlines the fact that King saw this as more than just a horror story. It's a theological text. The whole battle between David Carver's faith and the nihilistic void of Tak is the central conflict. Getting an expert on faith suggests he was being very careful with the language and the ideas.
And you can't overlook the smaller cultural details either. The music. He needed explicit permission to reprint lyrics.
Yeah, from songs like One Piece at a Time, Do You Believe in Magic, Leaving on a Jet Plane.
It's such a classic King move.
It is. The songs act as these little cultural anchors, this emotional shorthand for the characters. They tie the absolute surreal horror of their situation back to the normal, everyday world they were just ripped out of.
Okay, so with that foundation set, the high praise, the meta-narrative, the blend of research, let's drop into the place itself, Desperation, Nevada.
And the setting here is, it's not a backdrop. It's an active psychological weapon. Desperation is located on US 50, which has the lovely nickname, the loneliest highway in America.
And this isn't like a peaceful, quiet kind of isolation.
No, this is isolation as a void. The source material captures the psychological toll of this place perfectly, especially through Peter Jackson, who's a total city guy.
He calls it desert agoraphobia, ballroom syndrome.
Ballroom syndrome. What a chilling, brilliant phrase. It's that fear of huge empty space, that feeling that you're totally exposed and tiny. Jackson feels like the sky is literally pressing down on him.
So he's already primed for horror before anything even happens. He's crushed, he's exposed, he's insignificant.
The perfect state of mind for what talk is about to unleash.
And the first sign that this landscape has been spoiled is just visceral and horrible before they even reach the town.
Yeah, Mary Jackson sees it first. A tiger-striped cat. It's dead, obviously. But the language is so unsettling it was nailed there or glued there to a speed limit sign.
It's not just a dead animal, it's an installation, a piece of art.
It's a trophy. A grotesque warning sign made by the evil that's taken over. Peter tries to rationalize it away, Satanists in the desert or something.
But Mary knows better.
She knows. The act is too purposeful, too. Wrong. The territory is spoiled.
And the moment you enter that spoiled territory, you meet its agent, Collie Entragian, the town cop.
Entragian is immediately just. An unnerving physical presence. His scale. He's immense. And his movements are described in this really bizarre, heavy way, like watching a freight elevator go up.
He's not just a big guy. He's like a physical distortion of a person.
Exactly. And the critical assessment of him is, well, it can't be overstated. The sources fight him as the most formidable bad guy King has produced since Randall Flagg in The Stand.
Wow. That's a high bar. Flagg is the ultimate King villain.
He is. And to be put in that category means Entragian represents this massive primal threat.
Yeah.
But there's a key difference the source material helps us unpack.
Okay.
Flagg is often cunning, charming, manipulative. Entragian is primarily a host, a vessel. His eyes are bright gray, peculiarly empty. And he has this terrifying, instantaneous volatility.
He can switch on a dime.
From a friendly cop to a stone-cold killer in a blink. That instability is the tell. It's the sign that the person you're seeing is just a shell and something alien and unpredictable is at the controls.
Let's get into the mechanics of the arrests, because they really establish the nature of this evil. It's methodical, it's predatory, and it's just absurdly violent.
So first we follow Peter and Mary Jackson. They're pulled over for a supposed broken taillight.
Which is just the pretext.
Right, it's the veneer of law and order that TAC uses to trap people. The real horror is when Entragian finds the evidence he planted. A gallon-sized baggie of marijuana.
Sealed with strapping tape.
And it has a round, yellow Mr. Smiley Smile sticker on it. The source is very specific. The Jacksons had no idea it was even there, hidden under the spare tire.
That sticker. That's so creepy. It's this childish, cartoonish detail on this cold-blooded act of framing someone.
It speaks to the entity's twisted sense of humor. Or maybe its complete lack of any human morality. Crime and punishment are just a joke to it. It's a hallmark of an intelligence that sees human lives and laws as just playthings.
But then the violence really, really escalates with the next family.
The Carvers. Ralph, Ellie, and their kids, David and Kirsten, who they call Pi. They're in an RV that says 4 Happy Wanderers on the back.
Which is just heartbreaking.
It's this immediate, brutal contrast between the promise of a family vacation and the terror they're about to face. And the violence is immediate.
And it's directed at the youngest.
Yeah. The little girl, Pi, is physically pushed down the RV stairs by the possessed Entragian. The description is awful. It makes an awful sound like a branch breaking under a weight of ice.
Sickening. And that physical violence is paired with these volatile racist outbursts when Peter Jackson tries to reason with them.
Entragian just explodes. Shut your quacking Jew mouth.
But then that moment is followed by this insane contradiction.
Right. He doesn't just shoot Peter. He fires the .45 into Peter's stomach multiple times while hugging him chummily.
Hugging him.
And says, with this grotesque affection, "In desperation, we don't care about those things much." This is why he's so formidable. He's a total breakdown of coherent reality. Love and murder, law and chaos, all in one giant volatile package.
It's the ultimate expression of the town's spiritual poisoning. It's meant to cause absolute instant despair.
Which brings us to the core survivors. The people talk is trying to break. And we have to start with the central, reluctant hero, John Edward Marinville.
Who enters this whole nightmare already battling his own massive demons.
Oh, yeah. Marinville is introduced with a ton of ego and accolades. He's the famous novelist, the literary Elvis Presley, aging overweight.
National Book Award winner. Shelby Foote apparently compared him to John Steinbeck, so a big deal.
A huge deal on the outside. But inside, his life is a wreck.
Yeah.
He's recently sober, and as he puts it, the problem with sobriety is that you remembered all the things you had to be scared of.
And he's scared of a lot.
Prostate cancer, literary decline, the fear that his best work, his famous books, are all in the past.
So this cross-country motorcycle trip isn't some artistic pilgrimage. It's an ego trip, an attempt to resurrect himself, maybe get a new book out of it.
And his arrest just brilliantly strips all that ego away. He's stopped for public urination. It's profoundly undignified.
And then the cop recognizes him.
Not just recognizes him, becomes a psychotic fan, runs his name altogether, John Edward Marinville, gushing about the very books Marinville is afraid he can't live up to anymore.
Humiliation on top of terror. And while he's doing this bizarre fanboy routine, he's planting dope in Marinville's saddlebag.
So now the great writer is completely trapped. His imprisonment forces him to confront his own weakness. His imagination, which he calls overtrained, immediately turns on him. He sees these vivid images of the cop digging a shallow grave for his body in the desert.
His whole journey becomes a struggle against his old life. The booze, drugs, and younger women.
The desert forces him to find substance where before there was only surface.
And in total contrast to Marinville's struggle for redemption, we have David Carver, the young boy whose entire identity is rooted in absolute, unwavering faith.
And David's faith isn't just. It's not theoretical. It was forged in some really intense trauma. He had a close friend, Brian Ross, who had a terrible accident.
Fractured skull on life support.
Right. The source vividly describes the sound of the breathing machine's white accordion, just this relentless mechanical sound of suffering.
And David went to visit him.
He did, to confront his own fear, and he was guided by this interior, still, small voice. And then Brian miraculously woke up, which basically confirmed for David that he was being guided by something real.
Something beyond human understanding.
And this experience was reinforced by Reverend Gene Martin, who met with David. Martin gave him the framework, telling him faith wasn't rational and that David was touched by God.
So David had read the Bible like homework, 20 pages a night.
Focusing on stories of resilience and divine intervention, like Daniel and the lion's den. So when he's imprisoned, David immediately becomes the active force.
He finds a key.
On the body of a dead officer downstairs. He uses it to get out, grabs a .45 revolver, and immediately walks into a confrontation with Tuck's forces.
He fights a coyote.
A big coyote, clearly summoned by the entity. And the image of this young boy shooting this animal 3 times, it's this sudden, shocking act of violence that is his spiritual initiation. He is now Tuck's direct enemy.
And his real role in the story becomes the reluctant prophet.
Exactly. He's the one who explains things like the innie and talk to the completely baffled adults. The still, small voice isn't guiding him to escape. It's guiding him to confront.
Their survival also hinges on a few unexpected allies getting swept up in this.
Right. First, there's Steve Ames, who's Marinville's roadie. His job was basically to maintain Marinville's image as the thinking man's lone wolf, while driving the Ryder truck with the Harley in the back. He's the practical, skeptical one.
And he picks up a hitchhiker, Cynthia Smith.
Cynthia has this backstory of extreme vulnerability. We get this chilling detail that her ex-boyfriend wanted her ear as a bookmark. So her intuition, which has been sharpened by survival, makes her incredibly sensitive to the town's spiritual poison. She and Steve start investigating what's going on.
And then there's Tom Billingsley, the old town vet.
An alcoholic who gives them shelter, at first in the abandoned movie theater, the American West, which he sadly calls his place to be with my friends. He represents the locals who just stayed too long and got consumed by their demons.
And Cynthia's intuition proves to be spot on.
Oh, yeah. At the mining office, she warned Steve not to touch a specific piece of stone, sensing it was nasty.
And he feels it later.
He does. When he's near that stone, his mind is flooded with these violent, hypersexualized thoughts about Cynthia. Impulses he knows are alien, but they sound like his own inner voice.
And he has this horrifying realization that in this town, sex and murder had somehow changed places.
It's such a sophisticated layer of horror. Talk doesn't just kill you, it tries to corrupt you. It amplifies your worst impulses. Steve's masculinity, Cynthia's history of abuse, to turn the town into an incubator for despair.
And Billingsley, sadly, succumbs to a more direct threat.
He's killed by a cougar, another one of Talk's animal agents.
So now we have to get to the engine of all this rot, the entity itself, Talk, and the lore of the China Pit.
Talk is it's a brilliantly conceived evil because it's so unconventional. The source material gives us all these contradictory definitions. It's a god, a demon, or most unsettling, a dangerous nothing, like a voice in the wind.
The unformed heart.
Right. It's explicitly an outsider. It's basically an ontological absence that has been given a malicious will.
And its philosophy, which it preaches through Entragian, is pure nihilism.
There's no God in desperation, baby boy. Out here, there's only Candelash.
Candelash, what does that mean?
It's Talk's word for the empty vastness, the absolute vacancy of divine purpose, the idea that there is nothing steering the ship so everything is permitted. It's the linguistic core of the despair it's trying to force on its victims.
And the source material tracks the physical toll of possession. A human body just can't contain this thing for long.
Not at all. Entragian's body starts failing almost immediately. You get these visceral details like liquid pops as his skin let go, his uniform turning a muddy red.
Yeah.
The host is being burned out.
So when Entragian's body finally gives out, Talk moves.
The Ellen Carver,
Yeah.
David's mother. And this new possession is even more grotesque, suggesting Talk is either losing its grip or maybe getting stronger and more destructive.
The physical manifestations are just repulsive.
Her lower lip splits open, huge blisters rise on her face, blood trickles from her eye, and there's this overpowering stench of decay. The body is literally being consumed from the inside,
And the focal point of this horror is the China Pit mine, Rattlesnake number 2.
which is described as looking like a sore which is rotted through the skin of the earth.
And that's the core metaphor of the whole book.
It is. The mining process didn't just stumble upon the evil, it enabled it. They poisoned the ground with sulfuric acid from these things called kantas to free the ore. In doing so, they literally rot the ground. The physical industrial rot mirrors the spiritual rot of the town.
And at the very bottom of this pit of corruption is the Innie, Talk's home.
The Innie is described as a funnel-shaped hole in the floor of a mine chamber. It glows with a baleful scarlet light, and it looks terrifyingly organic, like a hole, like an eye. It's the portal, the well of the worlds.
And David, channeling this ancient knowledge, is the one who explains its history.
He recounts the story from 1891. Chinese miners, including the Lucian brothers, broke through into the Innie chamber
Isn't Talk emerged?
as a snake made of smoke. The effect was immediate and maddening. Most of the miners were driven insane, changed. But the Lucian brothers held on long enough to perform this desperate, heroic act.
They sealed the drift.
They did. They sealed it off, trapping the majority of the infected miners inside, just before engineers from Reno could arrive to see what they'd found. A century of suppressed evil, basically, reopened by modern greed.
And Talk isn't subtle. It uses the desert wildlife as its agents.
Oh, yeah. Aggressive coyotes and desert wolves that respond to the command, Takala. Some with glowing eyes, buzzards that attack on command, and of course, the cougar that killed Billingsley.
It even uses smaller things, like spiders.
Right. The Ellen thing uses them to form geometric patterns, the shape of the Innie. It's a constant, low-level ecosystem of malice designed to instill paranoia and fear.
Which brings us to the final confrontation. David, fully in his role as prophet, insists they have to go back to the China Pit.
And this is the definitive spiritual choice. He tells the others they can't just escape. They have to go back to destroy the Innie and set his mother's body, her shell, to rest.
And this is where we get the free will covenant.
Yes. David explains that Talkin wants them to leave, because the evil can't truly act against them unless they violate their own free will. If they choose to leave, they're abandoning their responsibility. But if they choose freely to go and confront the evil,
They open themselves up to both the danger and the possibility of divine help.
it forces the ultimate moral choice on them. They have to walk into the fire. Their weapon is NFO, ammonium nitrate fuel oil, a common mining explosive, a tool of destruction that has to become a tool of salvation.
The journey into the mine is met with immediate, devastating loss.
David's father, Ralph Carver. He's killed by an eagle, another manifestation of tack that attacks him inside the dark mine drift.
And David's reaction is just the raw heart of the tragedy.
He screams, "Oh God, please make it stop hurting my daddy." And that moment becomes the crucible for Marinville's redemption.
The aging egoist faced with this pure, pointless suffering. And the source highlights his struggle. His deepest instinct is to run, to save himself.
But he doesn't. He grabs the eagle's talon, which is buried in Ralph's throat, and he twists it until he hears a brittle tearing sound.
It's his moral conversion, realized in a single act of selfless violence.
He's no longer the man whose reputation was a joke. He's a warrior, fighting for the boy and the man who just died.
So Marinville, battered and bleeding, enters the main chamber, the Antak,
which is bathed in that scarlet light, lined with these grotesque stone carvings of wolves and coyotes. He approaches the funnel, the well of the worlds.
And Talk's final attack is purely psychological.
It screams at him in the voices of Entragian and Ellen Carver. It tries to pull him back into his old life, offering him everything he feared losing. Success, money, women, and I can heal you.
The ultimate temptation, but he refuses.
He uses the claw end of a hammer to rip open the NFO bag and pours the contents straight down the small, screaming throat of the innie, and the red light is just obliterated.
The portal is sealed.
He's hauled out by Steve, severely injured but alive. The survivors, Mary, Steve, Cynthia, and David, escape in an ATV as the mine collapses behind them, the end of Tech's reign in desperation.
But that's not the end of this story. There's one last crucial piece of evidence that redefines everything.
The unobtrusive miracle. This is where the theology comes full circle.
It all hinges on what was in David's pocket. He reveals that Marinville didn't use a spare bullet to set off the NFO. He discreetly took a single bullet from David's pocket in the chaos of the mine shaft.
A bullet that David was carrying for a heavy, heavy reason.
He intended to use it on himself, if it came to it, to stop Talk from taking him as a host.
So when Marinville was comforting the grieving boy, he took that bullet, the symbol of David's ultimate despair, without him knowing.
But the impossibility is what he left in its place.
When David checks his pocket after they've escaped, the bullet is gone. And in its place is something Marinville could not possibly have had access to.
An excused early pass from my school back in Ohio.
From the previous fall, a piece of paper David had stuck on a nail in a tree hundreds of miles away. It's an impossible substitution. An object teleported across the country into a dying boy's pocket.
And that single strange piece of evidence confirms it. There was a benevolent counterforce at work. The still, small voice was real.
The proof of the dark force was grotesque violence and racist slurs. The proof of the divine force was intensely personal, almost bureaucratic.
A grade school pass.
Think about it. The divine intervention wasn't a choir of angels or a pillar of fire. It was a small paper artifact of David's normal life. It's the ultimate confirmation that David, the prey boy, really was touched by God. A God whose evidence is small, specific, and totally undeniable in the context of the story.
The genius of King here is just dust. It's the synthesis. We start with critics comparing him to Poe, and we end up discussing a miracle that hinges on a school pass from Ohio. Desperation is a war fought on physical, psychological, and theological fronts all at once.
And if we pull back from this deep dive, the final thought for you to consider is the nature of that evidence. The unobtrusive miracle. We're always looking for some grand, irrefutable proof of forces beyond our world. But what does it suggest when the proof of the divine, the evidence of grace, is something as small and strange and specific as a missing bullet and a grade school pass? It asks us to look closely at the impossibly personal, quiet moments in our own lives and consider where and how we might find proof of opposing forces at work. A profound challenge to carry forward. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.